Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
7 this Friday in your nation's capital. Thanks for tuning in to O'Connor and Company. Coming up in 30 minutes, we'll check in with the great one, Mark Levin, a big book signing tomorrow, the Barnes & Noble in Reston. You're going to want to be there. And at 8:35, Janine Lawson, former Prince William County Supervisor, talk about a victory for those suing the Digital Gateway Data Center project that got jammed through by those supervisors. And now it's stalled because of this court ruling. We'll get into that coming up at 8:35. It's Larry O'Connor with Patrice Onwuka.
Happy Friday, Larry.
Hey, right back at you, lady. Joining us right now is Kevin Dayaratna. I've been working on that name all day. I've turned it into a song. Kevin Dayaratna. Kevin Daya. I hope I'm saying it right. His book is Cooling the Climate Hysteria. He's at the Heritage Foundation, as all brilliant minds are. Thanks for joining us, Kevin.
Good to be with you. Thank you for having me.
So you are a data analyst, and you look at statistics, numbers, statistician. I'm told that the geniuses in academia and at NASA and everything, they do the same thing, and yet somehow you come up with some different findings with regard to carbon emissions, CO2, and the environment. What does your data show you with regard to specifically the EPA this week saying no, CO2, the air, literally the air we breathe out of our lungs, is not a pollutant?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think the short answer is that to come to the conclusion that CO2 is a pollutant, you have to go out of your way to cherry pick the data. And what we did at the Heritage Foundation is that we hired a group of experts to engage in research to chime in on the boundary of climate change and policy from a variety of different angles, from climate modeling, from the physics to the biology to the public health aspects. And what we found is overall that climate change, while occurring, it's not occurring at nearly a catastrophic rate, as these people claim it is. And it's been pushed that way under the conception that it is occurring at a catastrophic rate to justify a political agenda. And that's quite disturbing. And we're very glad to see that the Trump administration is rolling back on these unnecessary regulations that underpin pretty much everything in our economy, including enabling this very call to operate.
So, Kevin, speaking about rolling back a lot of these green New Deal, green related programs and subsidies, we saw the EPA kill this grant program to boost solar energy among low-income households. Now, this was a Bernie Sanders brainchild where it's like, green solar panels for all type situation. And he really positioned it as a jobs program more than any sort of impact on the environment or savings for families. I mean, do you agree with the idea that a lot of these green solar energy programs really are not the big savings that they've been pitched as particularly under the Biden administration, but generally on the left? I mean, are they really helping the environment or helping save money for regular families?
It's a wonderful question, and this is a great question. So we also looked at this, and if you can actually look up the Heritage Foundation Climate Calculator. This is based on the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change models. And if you look at what our calculations show based on the models, and it's not just our calculations, anybody on either side of the aisle would agree with this. Even if you buy in to all this doom and gloom, this hysteria about climate change, what happens is that there are a variety of assumptions you can make about how the climate responds to CO2 emissions. And experts have put out a whole spectrum of values on here. Even if you take the worst case scenarios, if the United States were to completely halt CO2 emissions via widespread adoption of these things, via widespread adoption of solar panels, via widespread adoption of electric vehicles, via widespread adoption of wind power and all of these things that the government has tried to subsidize over the past, you will see no more than 0.2 of a degree Celsius temperature mitigation by the end of the century. It is trifling, and it's quite disturbing that they throw so much money at these problems that essentially have no effect. It is crony capitalism at its finest.
So here's what is vexing to people who are just trying to get to the truth and just trying to figure out, all right, either carbon emissions are destroying our atmosphere and making drastic changes in our climate, or it's not. So what is frustrating to so many people is that everything that you're saying in your book, Cooling the Climate Hysteria, and in all of the analysis that you're chugging out there at Heritage Foundation, there are going to be just as many, if not more, scientists and data analysts who are going to look at the same numbers and they're going to say, oh, no, this proves that your SUV is going to kill the planet and we only have 5 years left before it's irreversible. How do you sort of reconcile the disparity?
Great question. So basically, there are a variety of climate models. So, it's very hard, and you notice this when you watch the Weather Channel, to make forecasts, say, 5-10 days in advance, right? Maybe a couple days in advance, it's reasonable. But when you really try to make weather forecasts out into the future, it's very, very difficult to predict. So the climate models that these people use, that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change leans on, tries to make predictions decades, if not centuries, into the future. And so that's fine, right? It's a fascinating exercise to try to make forecasts this far into the future. But what ends up happening is that then you have the real question is, how accurate are these forecasts? And obviously, we can't foresee what the future is going to hold. But what we can do is back test these models to see how well they do on prior temperature data. And what you notice is this gross overprediction. They vastly overpredict. They can't even predict the past 10, 20 years. So how can you actually buy into the fact that they're going to be able to predict the following 100 years? They grossly overpredict the following 100 years. And that just shows you that the climate change, while the temperatures are increasing, they are increasing at a far, far lower range than these so-called experts claim. And what they do is they engage in circular logic by fine-tuning their models to achieve a particular result. And at the end of the day, it's just baloney, the climate models themselves. There are a couple that get them right. There are a couple of get them right. But at the end of the day, most of them far, far overpredict. And like I said, if you take that range of climate sensitivities, how sensitive the planet is to CO2 emissions, if you look at how the climate models do, you're actually at the far lower end of that range. So I told you that if the United States were to abate CO2 emissions, there'd be no more than 0.2 degrees Celsius temperature mitigation by the end of the century. In reality, you're going to have far, far less than that if you actually take into account the proper climate sensitivity.
Dr. Dayaratna, let's put this in a broader context about culture and the changes that people have been forced to make. You talked about, some of the climate change tax credits and things, people retrofitting their houses with new energy saving, efficient things like stoves and refrigerators, appliances. But then also it gets worse than that. And I think it's the cultural hysteria. And I love the title of your book there, where you call the Cooling the Climate Hysteria, where there's so many young people who don't want to have kids because they're worried about the carbon footprint that having children would lead to, or they buy into the overpopulation arguments that there are too many, that the earth is too populated as is, and that's damaging to the climate. Ending subsidies is great and all of that, but how do we really tamp down from a cultural perspective and really help shape the future generations to recognize that, yes, you can take care of your planet, but you don't have to be insane about it and go to such draconian ends?
So it's a great question. I think the answer is to continue to pump out the truth and emphasize what the true story is. So the tide has turned. Fortunately, the Trump administration is rolling back a lot of these unnecessary regulations and basing it on sound science, unlike what the left has been doing. And we just need to continue to push the envelope on this. We need to continue to get the message out there. And yeah, I think that's going to pay off in the long run.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you for a very informative and I think enlightening conversation,
Absolutely,
Kevin Dayaratna.
yes.
Again, the book is called Cooling the Climate Hysteria, Heritage Foundation. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you for having me.
It is 7:15.